Governor, welcome back.
Brian, it's always a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Every time you're on, we say, well, can you believe this media, the pace of these media stories? And again, we're back at it. First off, on the shutdown and the president's proposal Saturday, can you tell me legislatively what you expect to happen this week?
I think that some Democrats are going to start breaking from Nancy Pelosi because they're going to have a hard time explaining in their districts why, when the president puts on the table actually more than they have in the past asked for, and he's giving them what they say they want, which is get the government open, get these 800,000 people to work, create some more resources on the border for adjudication of asylum seekers, make sure that we have a pathway for dreamers. You get all these things, and all you got to do is just give a pittance of the amount of money for border security that you have previously voted for, actually less money than it's cost to have the shutdown, and we have a deal. And if they walk away from this, then it's proof positive the Democrats, and specifically Nancy Pelosi, do not care about 800,000 government workers, nor do they care about the dreamers. They just care about trying to hurt Donald Trump more than they care about helping a lot of people who need their assistance, many of whom are government employees and American citizens.
All right, here is Benny Thompson. He's an influential person in the House, chairman of Homeland Security. Cut 8.
I would not rule out a wall in certain instances. Now, the notion that we can't have barriers is just something that's not true. But again, Martha, you have to have a plan. And the plan that the president initially started with is not where he is now. And so we don't know where he will be tomorrow. But clearly Democrats are for border security.
So, Governor, of course, that's a negotiation. Go get your hands dirty, roll up your sleeves. Do you believe we're at the point where Pelosi shouldn't even show up? Give surrogates, powerful people, a mandate and back out. It's too personal.
It's clearly too personal to her, and she's gotten herself in a bind because she's trying to placate people on the far left of her party. She can't make them happy and come up with a solution that's rational, because the people on the far left are irrational. And frankly, some of the things that Nancy Pelosi said, they're irrational. When you say that a wall of any kind is immoral, then take down the barriers around the U.S. Capitol. Take down the barriers around the White House. Take down the barrier, Nancy, around your own home. I guarantee you she locks her doors at night, and people can't just walk up to her door because it's all walled in. I mean, this is so disingenuous, and I think she probably regrets having made the comment about the morality of the wall, because frankly, that flies in the face of anybody's common sense.
All right, Governor, I got to ask you, too, about the president's quandary. He was, his base is conservative. One of his lead advisors is Mark Meadows. Another one is Lindsey Graham. And when he comes out and says things like he proposed, which was, I think, pretty, $5.7 billion for the border barrier, 3 years of DACA recipients protection, 3 years for TPS protection, $800 million for humanitarian aid, things that conservatives don't like. You have people like Ann Coulter come forward, who I really like. Ann, her books are great. She's an original thinker and great story. But Ann Coulter says, I voted for Trump and I got Jeb. Rush Limbaugh, in a more positive fashion, also says the president shouldn't be giving. You just can't govern without giving in. And if conservatives, even though you're a conservative, there's not enough conservatives for you to win the presidency. You can't govern just for conservatives. So how does the president win here?
Well, first of all, Ann Coulter, if she's got the way to get it done, let her run for office. She's never done that, so she's never had to be in the position of having to sit down and work through something to a solution. I have, and the president's in that position. And you're not going to get everything you want. We need to listen to those great political scientists of all time, the Rolling Stones, whose immortal song, you don't always get what you want. And that's the number one rule of politics. You give, you get. Sometimes you get more, sometimes you get less. But the president's main goal, and the big promise he made, was securing the border. He can do that, but in order to do that, he's got to do something that, quite frankly, I don't have a problem with. I think we do need to resolve this issue with the people who came here because their parents brought them. They had nothing to do with it. It's not their fault. You don't give a ticket to the kid in the back seat when the dad up in the front seat is driving and gets a speeding ticket. You give it to the dad. You don't punish the child. And so there are some concessions, I think, that are reasonable and responsible for the president to make. Won't make everybody happy, but we're not going to have any solution that everyone's going to love. And if it's something that some people or most people just don't totally love, then it's probably a fairly decent and responsible solution.
Why do you think the president cares so much what Ann Coulter thinks?
Well, I know he doesn't want people to go out and try to stir up his base against him, and I'm not sure why she would, because she's got to deep down know that he can't just be arbitrary. He's not a dictator. He's a president. He's got to work within the confines of getting something through two houses of Congress, one where he doesn't have 60 votes to beat the filibuster, and the other where Nancy Pelosi is in charge. Anything he gets done is going to be miraculous. He's laid something on the table that is incredibly generous, very responsible, and very well balanced, and Republicans ought to, get behind it. Some of them will have to suck it up and say, this is not what I want, but it's better than having nothing, and it's certainly better than having a closed government and an open border, so let's go forward with it.
So we have a couple of books out, one by Cliff Sims, who I've not met, I don't think, and the other one about Chris Christie, and we got excerpts, not the whole book yet. But he says Chris Christie in particular says the president hired riffraff. Tom Price as a Health and Human Services Secretary, he was not ready for prime time, as was Jeff Sessions. He also was very critical of Scott Pruitt and Michael Flynn. Said there needed to be more Kellyanne Conways, too few Kellyanne Conways, and a boatload of Sebastian Gorkas, too few Steve Mnuchins. What's your reaction? I know I'm putting you in an odd spot, but I just also know our audience appreciates your opinion because your daughter's there. But what's the reaction there? Because Chris Christie's still in good terms with the president.
I would say after this book, the answer would be no. President doesn't like people who violate his trust. I don't either. I like Chris. He's a friend, and I respect him. But I think when people go out and they take things that they've learned in private and in secret, and they betray the trust of someone who gave them confidence, I just think that's wrong. I think to profit off that is not appropriate. And he may have those feelings about some of those people. I have no idea whether he's angry because he didn't get hired into the cabinet. I just don't know. But I don't think that the best way to help this president and this country is to undermine the people that he did hire, and to be vicious about it, and I'm disappointed that Chris would do this.
A couple of things. You were in a unique place to talk about this. Rudy Giuliani often makes news, but I was convinced this weekend the news he made was purposeful. But he tends to push the communication envelope. So, to much of the surprise of many anchors, with Chuck Todd and Jake Tapper. So he's talking about the Russia deal, the Moscow Tower. Now, we thought the conversation ended with Moscow in January of 2016. Michael Cohen says June, and then Rudy Giuliani says this, cut 16.
Well, it's our understanding that they went on throughout 2016. Weren't a lot of them, but there were conversations. Can't be sure of the exact dates, but the president can remember having conversations with him about it.
Throughout 2016?
The president also remembered, probably could be up to as far as October, November. Our answers cover until the election.
So, that made news, cut 17.
That is news to me, and that is big news. I mean, why, 2 years after the fact, are we just learning this fact now?
Well, he actually said something similar to us last week, almost exactly. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, is that out there? So when he does that, I mean, are you allowed to say, does the communications department know he's going to do it at the White House?
My guess is that they don't, because they normally do not have the conversations with the president's private attorneys.
Gotcha.
It's why when Sarah, for example, at the press briefing is asked to comment on something going on in the legal case, she says, I can't answer that. I refer you to the president's attorneys, because she can't represent what the president's attorneys say. So my guess is they don't know. They have no idea. They find out when Rudy goes on TV and says something.
Are you astounded? I mean, you know him. You know the president. I mean, what do you think the president's thinking when he goes on and says, oh, by the way, Mr. President, does he say I'm pushing the envelope today? You might want to stay tuned?
I know both Rudy and the president pretty well, and both of them sometimes act, let's just say, a bit capriciously when it comes to communicating, and I don't think that they always coordinate with someone else. They say what's on their mind at the moment, and even if it later gets them in trouble, it's not going to necessarily change the behavior.
It's been an interesting. It's been interesting. I don't know what to say. There's so much you can say. I know, but Governor, thanks so much. Appreciating. Best luck with your book and your show.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Always great to talk to you.
Same
and
here.
By the way, look out for those NFL refs. They're looking the other way at all times.
I know. I couldn't believe that play. Couldn't you?
Oh my gosh. Have a great day.
Go get him.
Be careful out there.
We're talking about the Saints-Rams, and it was a pass interference by a Rams cornerback that blew up a Saints receiver while the ball was still in the air. It was not called. Saints go on to lose.